we're going to do geometry, lesson 82. This one is on not just sine, cosine, and tangent, but on their inverse. And what that means is, if you have a right triangle, you use sine, cosine, and tangent. There are ratios that help you find out the lengths of the sides. If you don't know all the sides, you can use these. So we have sine, cosine, and tangent. And on your calculator, they use the first three letters of each of those. And then if you're using a phone, you turn your calculator sideways and you can see those three letters. And so they're buttons on there. And then the ratios for sine, it's the opposite over the hypotenuse. So if this was the angle we're talking about, and when they don't tell you the name of the angle, the amount, they use the theta sign. And so if this is the angle we're talking about, and we're trying to find out the sine, you'd use the opposite over the hypotenuse. And so the opposite would be over here. The hypotenuse is always the long slanted one. For cosine, it is adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then for tangent, it's the opposite over the adjacent. And so actually, when you're doing these, you're talking about the lengths of the sides. And so when you do, you can also use these to find the measurements of the angles if you know the lengths of the sides. And so this is very easy. This is actually easier than sine, cosine, and tangent. And what you do is the inverse of those. And so that would be -1 in front of each of those. And so I'm going to get up real close and show you on my calculator how you find this. And so I'm going to stand behind it so I make sure I'm getting the right screen. So on calculator, if you're looking on here, here's my calculator. Okay, so you turn it sideways and you see these different, you see sine, well, it's already on there. So you see sine, cosine, and tangent right there. Now, when you want to do the inverse, you see this second button right there. Push that second button and you can see it's highlighted now. And sine, cosine, and tangent have each become the inverse. And so it's sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, and tangent to the -1. And those are the three buttons we're going to use today. And so on your calculator, push that all calculators that have these three buttons will have a second button also. So push the second button and leave it on. And so we're going to go from there. So let me come back to that in just a sec. So in an example of that, we're going to find, again, they use theta for that measurement right there. So we're going to do, I think that's the one we're using. Yeah. So we're going to use theta equals sine, the inverse of sine actually, opposite over hypotenuse. See, you can see that from over here. And they gave me the numbers 15 for the hypotenuse and 12 for the side that is opposite of that angle. Opposite means across from. If it was right next to it, it'd be adjacent. That's what they mean by adjacent and opposite. Now, if it was this angle we were working on, this would be the opposite, which is also the hypotenuse, and one of these two would be the adjacent. And so this is where you would use tangent instead, because the other two make sure you use hypotenuse. So, nevertheless, today for this example, where we have 15 for our hypotenuse, 12 for this leg, and we want to find this angle right here, we're going to call it angle A. So we're going to say the angle is theta equals sine to the -1, which would be the inverse of sine, opposite over hypotenuse. And so instead of writing opposite over hypotenuse, I'm going to plug in the numbers. And so I write theta again equals sine the -1, And now I'm going to put 12 over 15. So then I'm going to put theta is approximately, and we're going to use the calculator to figure it out. So by doing so, I have on my calculator right here, I have the second button already highlighted, so I can see the negative ones by each of those numbers. And what I'm going to do is, if you recall, 12 over 15 is the same as 12 divided by 15. That's a division bar. So I'm going to say 12, make sure you can see, divided by 15, and then I'm going to do equals, and you see it says 0.8. Then I'm going to come over here and just push this sign button, and it comes out to be 53 point something, something, something. That's why I'm going to use the approximate sign right here and put 53 degrees. It's a degree. Because I was looking at that angle right there. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so next, I have a right triangle, and I am looking for this angle right here, X, angle X, and adjacent to it is 15 for that leg, and the hypotenuse is 37. So I'm going to find theta is, now if I have an adjacent and a hypotenuse are the two given side lengths I have. I'm going to go over here. Where do I see adjacent and hypotenuse? That's not it. That is it. That's not it. So I'm going to use cosine this time. That tells me which button to push. So adjacent over hypotenuse. That also tells me what order in which to write them. I'm going to do adjacent. So it's going to be cosine to the -1. That's the inverse of cosine. Adjacent over hypotenuse. That's what you need to write also. So then theta equals the inverse of cosine. Adjacent is 15. Hypotenuse is 37. So now I'm going to do approximate, and we're going to use it on the calculator again. So here we go. First I'm going to clear, but I still have that second, you see that? I still have that second button highlighted. So I'm going to enter, if you look at the board right here, I have 15 over 37. So that's the same thing. That's a division bar. 15 divided by 37 equals, and then I'm going to push the cosine button this time. And that's going to give me 66 point something, something, something. And so I'm going to say approximately 66 degrees. This isn't hard. You just have to remember the steps. So what you do is you do the division first, the button last. Make sure the second button on there is pushed before you begin. Let's do one more. So I have another right triangle. This one, it's like that. And I'm looking for this angle right here. They labeled it D. And the lengths of the sides they gave me were right here, 11, and right here, 16. Now here's my right angle right here. You see, that's the hypotenuse, and they did not give me that one this time. They gave me the legs, 11 and 16, and I want this one. This angle is the one I'm looking for. So this has hypotenuse, this one doesn't. So I'm going to use tangent this time, the inverse of tangent. So the theta will equal the inverse of tangent. Now it's opposite over adjacent. So here's my angle. Opposite is over here. Over adjacent is next to it. So it's going to be 16 over 11. That's how you know how to write the ratio. So it's 16 over 11. Let's use our calculator. Second button is already pushed. I'm looking at my ratio right here, 16 over, where is it? 16 over 11. So I say 16 divided by 11 equals, and then I push the tangent, the inverse of tangent button, and that is 55.49, which I technically could round up to 56. So I would say that angle is approximately 56 degrees. And your books kept it at 55.5, but either is fine. And so you're going to do A, B, and C for your homework for lesson 82. I hope it's easy for you, and please post your grades. Talk to you next time.